My name is Ros Savage, and I'm a British ocean rower and environmental campaigner. Also happen to be the first woman to row solo across 3 oceans. When I had my environmental epiphany, rather belatedly in 2004, when I was in my mid-30s, I was just so appalled that I hadn't really been aware of the massive environmental challenges that we're facing right now. And with all the zeal of the convert, I just wanted to find whatever I could do to contribute to the cause, to help get the word out, and ideally to reach outside of the choir, to actually get the message across to new audiences. And it was around that very formative time that I had a chance meeting with a guy who had rowed across the Atlantic Ocean with his mother, of all people. And somehow the fact that I'd rowed in college and discovered ocean rowing, and it seemed like a good way to get people's attention, and through the wonders of social media I could use my blogs and Facebook and Twitter to get the message out, even from my rowboat in the middle of the ocean. Just all these things collided and it just seemed to tick all the boxes. The more time I spend in this world of environmental awareness, the more I discover that there are some great and talented and creative people bringing so much passion and energy to this. I was in Copenhagen in 2009 for the climate change conference there, and these tens of thousands of activists, it was so inspiring, and especially the youth and also the city mayors who are doing everything in their power to make their domains as sustainable as possible. On the downside, on climate change, certainly the science seems to be getting more pessimistic. I've also done a lot of campaigning on the issue of plastic pollution, particularly in the oceans. And we still continue to generate plastic in just vast quantities every single day. And particularly the disposable plastics are my real bugbear, because to me it seems insane to make so-called disposable items out of a relatively indestructible substance, and a toxic indestructible substance at that. So there is definitely an awful lot of work that still needs to be done. I loved what Jerry said at the start of the conference, that breaking through is a process. It's not just a one-off thing that you go, oh, I'm broken through. There was the breakthrough when I wrote the 2 versions of my own obituary, the one that I wanted and the one that I was actually heading for, that revealed to me I needed to make some big changes. On the oceans, I had plenty of thinking time during the 520 days I've now spent alone at sea. And there have been many little epiphanies, and it's interesting that you ask me that question, because at the moment in my presentation I talked about this sort of creative tension where you feel a bit stuck in a place, and I'm in that stuck place right now. I'm seeing so much work that needs to be done in the world, and I'm trying to figure out where I can be most useful to that environmental cause, and that is my kind of burning question right now. You sometimes almost feel like there is such an overwhelming amount to be done, and I have to remind myself what I said this morning about, just taking it one oar stroke at a time. Just do something that helps on a daily basis to bring us closer to that greener future. I remember when I had that sort of light bulb over the head moment and decided that I wanted to row across oceans to raise environmental awareness, and my first thought was, that's perfect, and then my second thought was, that's impossible. I don't have, apart from being able to row, which is only about 1% of what you need to know to get safely across an ocean, I had so much that I needed to do to get me from where I was to where I wanted to be. And I'm a real believer in lists. I just wrote the mother of all to-do lists. Who would I talk to? What books would I read? What courses would I take? How much money would I need? What would I need to buy? I just broke it down in such small steps that when I looked at this list, it was a very big list, but there was nothing on there that was too big or too daunting. That I actually felt that this was starting to look quite doable, and from there on it was really just a case of working through the list. I was at this stage in my life when I still didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up, which was a bit sad considering I was in my mid-30s already. And I just felt like I'd lived most of my life according to what other people expected of me. My parents, my teachers, my peers, my friends. And I was trying to figure out just, who am I? I was going through a bit of an existential crisis, I suppose. Why am I here? What's the point of it all? And so when I wrote those 2 obituaries, I can remember how I felt as I wrote the fantasy obituary. I was writing more about who I would be rather than what I would do. It certainly didn't mention ocean rowing. And what I wanted to be was the kind of person who got out there and really lived life, who wasn't held back by fear or by caring too much what other people thought of them, or even by, the need or desire for more money. I wanted to free myself from those limitations. And as I wrote that, it felt so authentic and real to me that when I finished writing, I was like, whoa, what a great life I've had. And I had to remind myself that that was just the imaginary one. And compared with that, the obituary I was actually heading for at that time was nice, but by comparison, it seemed frankly quite boring and also a bit self-centered, not really being of service in the world. So I knew at that moment I needed to make some changes, but some of them were pretty big and scary, and it did take a while, but it was once you get that glimpse of the life that you could be living, it's very hard to go back to the life that you are living and just accepting it as it is. So I think change was inevitable from that moment, even if it took me a while to pluck up the courage. I think one of the biggest challenges facing the environmental movement, if I could call it that, right now is that most people are just too preoccupied with things that are much more urgent in their lives. Keeping their job, paying the rent or the mortgage, keeping the family happy. And those are first world issues. In the developing world, there are much more serious needs that are much more top of mind. And so I think there is this problem that environmentalism is perceived as a white middle class luxury, while so many people have much more urgent problems going on. And so increasingly I'm thinking maybe we need to deal with the inequalities in the world and with human rights issues so that people actually have the basic needs met, so that then they can turn their attention to the bigger global issues. I think what kind of brought me to that place was I became really fascinated by the psychology of human beings, and to me climate change and other environmental issues are just the #1 issue right now, and it just seems like most people are not listening, and I don't think it's their fault. It's, as you say, we need to take care of the contributing factors to actually put them in a place where they feel ready. I mean, even looking at my own journey, until I had my own head in order, until I was sort of on path for a life that was kind of happy and meaningful for me, I didn't have the emotional generosity or bandwidth to engage with global issues. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself as I got on the commuter train to go to the office every day. So I think it's about raising consciousness generally, but how can you talk about raising consciousness to somebody starving in Syria? This is why I've actually found plastic pollution a better sort of gateway issue, because recycling rates are so poor and recycling comes with a whole load of its own issues. But it's great because people can picture how many plastic bags they use, or plastic water bottles, or coffee cup lids, or whatever. So it does, in a way, have a much more... the human brain can process that in a way that it really struggles with climate change.